Hello, everybody, and welcome to Medicare Talk. I'm your host, James Donnelly, founder and CEO of Safe Haven Insurance, your Medicare and health insurance safe place. As you know, show started out originally as a conversational piece regarding Medicare and educating my listeners about Medicare. I started interviewing some guests and really saw a value in those interviews because we're bringing information to our listeners. And I enjoy being an informative piece for our listeners because I sit down with seniors every single day. I sit down with people of all age groups, but the seniors that I do sit down with every single day are struggling, whether it's financially, health-wise. There's a lot of poor planning, estate planning. So I try to bring my guests that are super focused on the aging population because the show is called Medicare Talk. So if you do like our show, please like it, subscribe, and share the episodes that you like because we want to get the word out there. We want to educate everybody. That's why we do this. I'm here today with Ahmed from Lotus Fitness. He is a personal trainer. And he specializes in working with aging adults. And I know how important it is to age healthy. I sit down with seniors every single day, and they're on 20, 25 medications. And they need those medications to survive. So I know how important it is to be healthy, especially here in the United States. It's very easy not to be healthy. I mean, fast food, processed food, genetically modified foods are shoved down our throats every single day. And I know mobility and moving, getting your heart pumping is so important. So tell us about how you got involved with working with aging adults and a little bit about what you do. So how did you get started in this?
Yeah, so my story goes back to actually being in middle school.
Okay.
I was one of those chubby kids who would always wear like one of those really big shirts at the beach so that nobody would see my body. And going into high school, I needed to figure out a way to be more confident. So I started getting really deep into exercise and nutrition and everything else. But it wasn't until college that exercise really became a religious part of my life. And I ended up joining a CrossFit gym. Have you ever heard of CrossFit?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's like crazy. For those of you who haven't heard of it, it's basically high intensity, really like raw kind of exercise, no pain, no gain kind of thing, which by the way, I don't believe in anymore. But we'll get to that later.
Hard. I've heard, because I've always toyed with joining a CrossFit gym. But as I'm aging, I have a bad shoulder, bad IT band, so I'm always scared to do that type of exercise because I don't, my cousin's a doctor and he said, the highest sports injuries come from CrossFit. So.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I'm 27 now.
Okay.
And a lot of my exercise now is undoing a lot of the injuries that I got from CrossFit.
Okay.
But nevertheless, it was an important part of my experience.
Okay.
Because when I was doing CrossFit, it made me feel more confident. It helped me have a community around me that was interested in exercising and living healthy. And so, there are pros and cons to everything. But I remember actually one day I was doing a workout and my coach, he was a military guy. So he was actually in the Marines. So he was very intense. And I liked that. It was actually amazing. But one day we were doing a workout and it was like a small garage gym at the time. Red walls, literally like a garage door. Mm-hmm. There was AC/DC playing in the background, Thunderstruck going on. Like the mood was electric. Yeah. And I was doing this exercise where I was throwing up weight and catching it, throwing it up and catching it. And you basically do that repetitively again and again and again. And I remember I threw up the weight one time and when I went to go catch it, I immediately felt my back go. And it was the first time that ever happened to me. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it was so terrible was because I automatically knew that I couldn't finish the workout. Later that night, when I went to go to sleep, there were no comfortable positions to sleep in. The next day, when I went to go study, couldn't sit down comfortably. I was like hobbling around campus. It just, my body felt terrible. And my biggest fear was that I was going to lose out on the community that I had, that I was going to lose out on the exercise that made me feel so confident because of this back problem. So what I ended up doing is I ended up researching, like, what can I do? Because I wanted to get back to the gym. I wanted to be with my friends. I wanted to do everything as quickly as possible. And the advice that I would typically get was just rest it. But I didn't want to hear that.
Isn't that the worst?
It's frustrating because it doesn't take into account like how I want to live my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for anybody, like, they have certain things that are hallmarks of their routines and their lives and everything else.
It's a lifestyle. I know if I miss a gym day, I'm lost. My mind is just not where it is. I don't have that mental clarity from that. And I don't look like a fit guy. I never really exercised.
You're being humble.
I'm being serious. But it's a lifestyle change. And it wasn't until I'm 45. It wasn't until I was 40. And I was looking at pictures from my 40th birthday. And I was like, holy crap, who's this fat guy? And it was really eye-opening for me. And I said, I really need to change my lifestyle. And it was a complete lifestyle change. Turns out I was sick. I didn't even realize I was sick. A few weeks after my 40th birthday, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid condition, which would explain why I was super heavy. But I also realized I wasn't eating right. I was always eating on the go. I was always had an egg sandwich, a hero, a slice of pizza. And then at night when I got home, right before I went to bed, I'd have a peanut butter and jelly and a glass of milk. That was my, plus I ate whatever I wanted. There was never any restriction on what I was eating.
I mean, it sounds delicious.
It does. Yeah. But I don't miss it. You really, after you get into a habit. So I was almost 250 pounds.
Okay.
And then I said, something's got to give. So I started exercising. I started doing a little cardio. I started really eating right. I tried keto, intermittent fasting. And, I got down to 184. So I lost 66 pounds, right? 66 pounds. And now I'm very cognitive of what I eat. Like, I don't eat a lot of breads. I hardly eat any breads, very rare. Do I eat breads or pizza or pasta? There's so many healthy alternatives. And you'd be surprised. Like, I'll never forget, like one morning I was like, I was going to the deli. I said, let me just grab a yogurt and a Nature's Valley granola bar. And I just happened to be waiting online and I was looking at the tab and it said, 120 calories. And I said, let me look at the other nutritional facts. So you have to physically like break the two ends and flip the tab over to see and it said, this product has been genetically modified. And I said, we're putting poison in our body. And that's why autoimmune diseases are at the all-time high. Cancer rates are at all-time. Heart disease, we're poisoning ourselves. And the government, the FDA, is allowing it to happen. I had a conversation with my daughters the other day, and I said, I was explaining to them, like, listen, I'm not worried about you being fat. That's the furthest thing from my mind. It's you're eating all these processed foods, and they're known to cause cancer. If you look on cold cuts, on the packaging of cold cuts, like on the ham that comes, it says there's a cancer warning on it. Yet it's in a deli case.
It's like those cigarette boxes.
It's like the cigarette boxes.
Yeah.
Isn't that insane?
That is.
I think that's absolutely insane. It's all processed food. So I explained all this. I said cancer rates at an all-time high, but it happened because I was talking about I have to go for a colonoscopy. So they said, why do you have to go for a colonoscopy? And I explained, why we have to do it, what they look for. She said, well, how does that happen? I said, it happens naturally because of all the crap that we put in our body. So my daughter says, so actually, they're allowing us to poison ourselves. My 10-year-old said this, and I said, yes. She's like, that's crazy. And I said, so I'm not like the food Nazi at our house, but I just want everybody to be a little aware of what they're ingesting, So I still have work to do on my journey, but it's a lifestyle. So I get it, and if I miss a day in the gym or have an injury, I did 3 mini triathlons.
Okay.
And then I saw these guys running past me, and they kept on going. I said, where the hell are these guys going? They're like, they're doing a half an Ironman. I'm like, I'm doing a half Ironman next year. So I had a year, started really training hard, and then all of a sudden, I would wake up in the middle of the night, like cringing. My knee was in so much pain. And then I did some research, and it was my IT band, which I didn't even know we had. I didn't even know what an IT band was. Like, and then as I learned about it, I'm like, they should tell us about this IT band when we're younger, because like it's such a huge part of our anatomy. No one tells you how to stretch your IT band. No one talks about it until you have an injury. And I couldn't run for 12 weeks. And then when I started to run again, I started to feel it. So now, like I'll do like 2.5 miles, and that's it. Like I can't push myself past that. But I totally get what you're talking about as far as an injury and being off the grid.
Yeah, it's like you had a certain goal where you wanted to push yourself, but because of this issue, I mean, it wasn't possible.
Exactly.
And that idea of my body is limiting me is something that I hate. And I hate it for myself. I hate it for everybody else. And the reason for that, again, just getting back to it, I realized that I needed to get back into the gym, but I needed to find a way to exercise where I wasn't going to make things worse and where I could still feel good. So I ended up studying anatomy, and I ended up looking into exactly how can I start to do this.
Okay.
And then I realized something that was completely mind-blowing. And it was that exercise isn't just about helping you look good, but it can help you feel really good.
100%.
Has that been your experience?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
How so?
So I remember pushing myself, and then I would hurt my shoulder, and then I couldn't do shoulders, or I couldn't do chest. I had to. So pushing myself with the heavy weights, and it wasn't really effective for me, because I knew, like I mean, I didn't always do insurance. I didn't always work in an office setting. I was a blue collar worker, and I abused my body since middle school. Like I was in construction, I was always lifting, I was always, and even though I didn't look strong, I was super strong, because like I was lifting barrels, wheelbarrows.
Those guys in construction
I know.
No
so
joke.
you could walk pushing a 150 pound wheelbarrow. So just certain things, I abused my body. And I didn't realize, my parents used to say, everyone used to say, take it easy, get help, because you're going to hurt yourself. And I'd be like, when you're young, you think you can do anything. Then all of a sudden, as you get older and you have your first injury, you're like, second injury, you're like, third injury. But now,
and you don't even have to get older. Like your story of people telling you, hey, like take it easy and stuff. That reminds me of my parents, like seeing me throw 200 pounds over my head and being like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, relax.
Exactly. So it is a way of life. It does make me feel better. If I missed the gym, like a couple weeks ago, I was just with the schedule for my family, I wasn't able to get to the gym.
Sure.
And I felt like crap. I really did. It was, and then it's the first day back in the gym. Number one, I couldn't believe my gains depleted so quickly after a couple weeks of not being in the gym. But I did feel so much better. You have that endorphin rush. You just feel stronger, more confident, just by doing that physical exercise.
Yeah. So to that point, in terms of the loss of gains, there's a study that came out, and it had people who were over the age of 65. I don't remember exactly how old they were, but they were over the age of 65. And they took a look at their muscle mass on day 1 versus day 10 of just being completely at bed rest. And they realized that there was a 3.3 pound loss of muscle within 10 days when they lowered their activity level.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
I remember when I saw that, I was like, what the heck? And by the way, I saw that in Dr. Peter Attia. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
So he's a physician who is an expert on longevity, on how do you live longer and how do you live better.
Peter Attia.
Peter Attia, a New York Times bestseller called Outlive.
Okay.
It's one of the books that informs a lot of my philosophy on exercise.
Okay.
And it's very interesting. That's where I ended up reading this study. But anyway, I mean, so when I realized this idea that exercise can help you feel really good, I needed to learn more. Like, I was so curious about that idea, especially as I learned more about muscles and like the IT band and your ACL and everything else. The more that I realized, well, your body is actually a whole system. Everything works together. And the more that I learned about that, the more that I learned from mentors and flew over the world and learned from physical therapists and took exercise classes, the more that I realized that anybody could change their lives through exercise so that they can feel better. And when I actually started implementing the exercises for my back and for other areas that were affecting my back, I ended up feeling really good. I ended up getting back to the gym. I ended up getting my life back. And that's what I want for anybody who's affected by chronic pain, especially those who can't do the most wholesome things in life, like play with their grandkids. Like, so yesterday, I was with my cousin and his 2 little boys.
Okay.
And we ended up going to Chuck E. Cheese.
Okay.
It was so much fun.
Hopefully you didn't eat it.
The pizza there is still good, guys.
Oh,
if you
stop
haven't
it.
been there, that was my first time there in like probably a decade, and the pizza's still really good. Anyway, so I was there. My mom ended up tagging along. So good.
You can't
I even
say
saw
that.
Chucky.
We're in New York.
Chucky was
you can't say that
dancing.
Chuck E. Cheese pizzas are really good. That's like we're gonna get blacklisted from YouTube. All right, and I'm gonna go out of business if you say that.
Hey, fair enough. But yeah, so my mom was with us, and she was trying.
How old is your mom?
My mom is 65.
Okay.
She actually just turned 65.
You didn't
last
bring her to
week.
me to work with on Medicare?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I'll have her have your information. But
Okay.
anyway, so you know, she was tired after running around this 3-year-old and this other 1-year-old who's, you know, at any point can hurt their heads. You need to like reach out and grab them before something happens. And so it brought to life this idea that when you're in your 60s, when you're in your 70s and 80s, you still need to be able to do things with your body because that's going to impact the way that you live your life with the people that you love. And that's why exercise is so powerful. Now, another reason why I find exercise so powerful is because back to that book, Dr. Peter Attia's Outlive. He says the number one longevity tool, said differently, the number one tool to help you live a long and amazing life is exercise. Now, I already had conviction that exercise was a powerful tool, but after reading all of the information he put out there in terms of how exercise can literally help people live longer, it's something that is, it has to be, for most people, it has to be a non-negotiable in terms of having exercise in their lives. And I was never the guy who'd be like, everybody has to exercise. But if you do want to live a long life and a happy life with people surrounding you and being able to travel with your spouse without having any issues, going on a hike, or if you want to be able to just go up and down the stairs at home without your knees feeling horrible, exercise has to become a part of your life.
So it's so true. I see it with the seniors I work with. I see it with family members. They, you know, and I tell them, my dad, walk to the corner, go outside, walk to the curb, walk back in. Do that a couple times a day. Walk to the stop sign, walk back, walk to the stop sign again, walk back, walk to the next stop sign. I say that, and my grandmother lived on the boardwalk, and she didn't leave the apartment. And I would say, Danny, go down to the boardwalk. Just get there. Take 5 steps. Come back. Just work on getting there every day. People are not mobile. They're not exercising. Forget exercise. They're sedentary. We have Netflix, we have Hulu, we have Apple TV. People do not get off the couch and leave the house. Certain people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I want to give those people grace still, because here's why. A lot of people have this idea that exercise has to be this thing where you're spending an hour in the gym every single day and you're pushing the limits. There's all this craziness attached to it. And it's not like that. You can do 10 to 15 minutes of exercise a day, focusing on the important areas that are going to help you stay mobile. And that's everything that you really need. It doesn't have to be this whole event. Again, a lot of people can just do their exercise from home. But the exercises that you do have to be appropriate. So back to your story, in terms of when you were pushing yourself and then you felt your shoulder and everything else. Well, what was the problem there? You weren't doing anything wrong. It's that the exercise dose was perhaps a little bit too much. And it's just like medicine. There's a right dose and there's a wrong dose. What is the right dose? Well, just like how you go to your doctor and he gives you a dose and then he says, come back and let's figure out if this is good. How are the side effects? Are you feeling okay? Is this working? Well, you might go back to the doctor and the doctor may say, let's change the dose. Let's up it. Let's bring it down a little bit. Let's keep it the same. Same thing with exercise. The dose of exercise really matters. And that's a point that just a lot of people don't have the information on, which is completely fair, but it's an important consideration.
Okay, that's great. I know we're talking about movement and exercise. I watched a show on Netflix. It was like a series, the Blue Zones, Centenarians. How do you say it?
Centenarians.
Centenarians.
Yeah.
So it was about centenarians, and they interviewed and followed these people all over the world, right? And the Blue Zones were people, centenarians are people who live over 100. And they were just active. They didn't exercise. They didn't go to the gym. They didn't lift weights. You know, for instance, in this village in Italy, they all walked up a hill every day to go to church. They would walk back down. They lived on a mountain, so there was 1 million steps to go up to their house. So they walked up the steps. They were just moving. And then foods, of course, there's no gluten in Italy. Like just if the bread is sourdough risen, it's just different quality of food. In Okinawa, everything's grown there. They garden, they weed, they're active. It's just movement, really. And I totally get with what you're saying. So who comes to see you? What's your typical client? Tell us about 2 clients you saw this week or 3 clients.
So I just want to touch on what you said there because one of my clients, she actually brought up that Netflix show, the Blue Zones, and we talk about it all the time.
I love it. It was eye-opening. It was really cool. Eye-opening.
It's really cool, but here's the problem, right? Because you're saying that, hey, they're not necessarily like going to the gym, but they're staying active. Now, a lot of what keeps people from staying active is the limitations that they have in their body because of pain. And that takes me to who I help.
Okay.
So I work with older adults who are experiencing limitations from their pain issues, and they want to live out their dream retirement, but they can't. And they're worried that they can't enjoy the activities that they love. They want to play pickleball, but sometimes their shoulder hurts, or they want to play with their grandkid, but when they go to bend down to grab the little toddler, they're feeling their back or they're feeling their knees or anything else. And they're concerned with the aging process. They want to make sure that they're feeling as good as that they can so that they can, again, live out the last few decades of their lives in the best shape possible.
Makes sense.
No.
So one of your typical clients, somebody you just saw.
Sure. So I have an example of a client who he wanted to be able to golf 18 holes. He had a hip replacement and he had back pain. And the problem was that he would get to around hole 9 and he would just start to feel some discomfort in his back, and it stopped him from being out there with his friends and everything. So he was afraid that he was going to miss out on his social life and everything else. Because these days he's retired and he wants to be out there, especially when the weather is nice and everything. So we've been doing some highly specific exercises for him that I only found through assessing him. Because the problem is, so back to this idea of dosing. Dosing is a highly personalized thing. Just like medicine, it has to be the right amount of medicine for the right person. But at the same time, the right exercise has to do with the person in front of you. So what that means is with this particular individual, we assessed him, got a very deep understanding of where he has more or less muscle from the right side to the left side of his body, the strength from the right side to the left side of his body, his range of motion, meaning how far he can move his limbs or how far he can move his spine and trunk and torso from one side to the other side. We took a look at his posture from one side to the other side. Now, you may have noticed a theme here from one side to the other side. Why is that? Because symmetry is key when it comes to moving well and moving with longevity in mind. Because if you have one side that's stronger than the other side, your body is likely going to favor that side.
Of course.
And when your body starts to favor that side, short term, it's actually a really smart cheat that your body uses, but long term, it can cause arthritis, ligament damage, tendon issues in that area, just because your body trusts it so much. So it's going to overuse it.
I had a hip issue, and just from walking funny with that limp, right? I started to develop a knee issue. Of course, I ended up going to the chiropractor. I got a couple adjustments, a little physical therapy, and I was 100%. But that's what happens when you have a knee replacement. I saw when my mother had a knee replacement. She was favoring her other leg, and then she ended up having issues on the good leg because it's compensating for the bad leg. So exact symmetry is so important, and I can totally see that.
Yeah, it's It's interesting you mentioned that, because one of the things I also take a look at with the assessment is weight distribution. Mm-hmm. So I'll literally have two scales on the ground. I'll ask somebody to just put one foot on the scale on the right, put one foot on the scale on the left. Then we take a look at how their body likes to distribute weight over their sides, wow. because that's really important too. So it's a very much a broad view, okay. and then a very close magnified view in terms of what's going on in people's bodies, and then from there, I take my anatomy knowledge, I take my physics knowledge, I take my exercise knowledge, and I put all that together in one nice salad, and we figure out some exercises for people to do.
Everybody, if you like the information that Ahmed and I are talking about, please definitely like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share, please. Ahmed, how do they find you? If somebody wanted to talk to you, how do they find you?
So you can go to lotusfitnessny.com. That's LOTUS fitness, FITNESSNY for New York.com. There's a lot of information there on my website. Or if you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can give me a call at 646-415-2349. You can find me on YouTube at Ahmed Trainer, AHMED Trainer. I have over 250 videos with exercises that you can do from at home if you'd like. I have information that I'm happy to send to you. I actually just created a document with that information from Dr. Peter Attia's Outlive
so
book.
I'm going to actually get that book.
Yeah, and if you'd like me to send the notes from that book so that you don't have to go out and buy it, okay. And so that you could save some time on reading it, you can just email me at Ahmed, AHMED, at lotusfitnessny.com.
Oh, that's great. Anything that folks could be doing at home, like just on a regular basis? Like, what would you recommend? I know you have to kind of see your clients and kind of dose them, but any tips for our listeners, like just kind of simple things that they could do just to kind of create a little longevity naturally?
Sure. So there's a type of exercise called a isometric. Mm-hmm. Another way to say this is a hold. So what do I mean by this? If I'm sitting in my chair, I can do an exercise right here, right now. I can actually do thousands. Okay. But I'm going to show you just one. So if I were to just lift my leg like this, and I were to hold my leg up here for 5 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I have just strengthened the muscles that are in my hip, the muscles that help strengthen my knee, the muscles that help strengthen my hip, and the muscles that are actually attached to my spine, just by doing that one exercise. Okay. And so what I'm trying to say is find an exercise that feels really good, hold a position, whether it's holding your leg up, whether it's turning your trunk and just maintaining that position, squeezing your stomach muscles. That could be another exercise there. The options are really endless. But what I recommend is for people to get started with very light exercise holds. Mm-hmm. And that's a really good place to get started in a way that feels good, in a way that feels safe, and in a way that's going to get your muscles stronger.
That's pretty much the basics. I know when I have clients that are coming out of a knee replacement or a long-term nursing facility or rehab center, that's the first thing the physical therapist has them do is just apply a little pressure and hold and see how long they can hold the leg for. Count, release, next leg, and just do a couple of repetitions a day.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because there are Olympic athletes that do holds like that. Okay. But again, everything just depends on the person. So an Olympic athlete, say an Olympic gymnast, what they might do is they might put 100 pounds on their body. They might pull themselves up and they might just hold that what that may look like for grandma or grandpa is it may look like having a towel attached to a pillar at home, and then they take the towel and they just pull on the towel for 5 seconds, trying to bring their arms back, and that's their version of that.
That's amazing stuff that anybody could do. That's really great. Hopefully, our listeners reach out to you. Do you only do in person? Do you do virtual? How does it work? Because we have listeners all over the country.
Yeah, so my preference is in person.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because the body is so 3D. What somebody may be doing on the first repetition of an exercise may look completely different on the fourth repetition. And making sure that every repetition looks good, especially if somebody has a movement limitation or injury or chronic problem, is really important for me to take a look at so that I'm just ensuring safety and everything else.
What about like a consultation or something like that? Could you do something like that virtually? Would you entertain that? I'm just asking.
Yeah,
I'm sure our listeners are curious.
I appreciate that. Typically, I want to make sure that people are coming in to at least see me once.
Okay.
I do offer consultative type professional relationships, but I need to be able to see somebody at least once before I would be involved in anything like that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And how do you get paid? Do you get paid from insurance? Is it self-pay? How does it work?
It's not insurance based. And it's funny because I have a lot of colleagues that are in the physical therapy space. I love what they do for people. And one of the things that they feel like is an issue is insurance. The reason that I say that is because on their end, when it comes to insurance, if somebody has a knee problem, typically what that means is that they only need to do the knee exercises, but that might not be the case.
Got it.
They may have an issue in their ankle, they may have an issue in their hip. But that being said, if somebody has had a surgery, somebody has had an issue, going to a physical therapist and seeing what they can do for them is the right thing to do.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ahmed. I appreciate it. And one more time, what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
Thank you, James. So it's lotusfitnessny.com, or you can give me a call at 646-415-2349.
All right, guys, you've heard it from Ahmed himself. I know we've spoken with an acupuncturist, a chiropractor. We've spoken with a lot of people in the health and wellness space. It's so important just to stay active and exercise. It will create longevity. It will help you be a centenarian. So please reach out to Ahmed if you have any questions or you'd like to meet with him and do a consultation. Just think about what we're doing. Plan for our aging. That's what this show is all about. Planning for our aging. It's not just estate planning. It's not just Medicare planning. It's just planning to live a long, healthy life. Get out there and move.
And if I can, health insurance is obviously incredibly important. A lot of the times with my clients, what I'll do is I'll make sure to contact their physicians or primary care providers so that we're in touch and so that we're on the same page with things. And of course, if you have good insurance, you can have a good doctor, and that doctor is going to have the time for you to be able to help you to live your best life.
And if you think that you don't have great insurance or you would like to sit down with me or even call me to review your plan, Medicare, health insurance, I definitely would love to review your plan to make sure you're on the right one and it is the perfect fit for you and your families. And you can reach out to me, James Donnelly, safehaveninsuranceagency.com, 631-608-1137. See you next week.